Good morning, everyone. Everyone, for those of you that have just joined us today, we're just waiting for some of the other attendees to join us. So we will be starting in about 3 minutes time. So just bear that in mind. For those of you that have never been to a webinar done by the Chamber before, we will not be able to see or hear you today. There are only two ways that you can communicate to us, and that's via the chat function and the QEA, which should be on the bar, either at the bottom of your screen or at the top of your screen.
And for those of you who've joined already, if you want to use the Q&A straight away and drop things into the chat, then do feel free to do so. I've just got one there from a good friend of mine, Martin, who's clearly there. He knows I can't see him, so he said boo. Boo straight back to you, Martin. Nice to see you, or not see you in this case. If anybody does have any questions or anything that they would particularly like to be answered about LinkedIn during the course of the next 60 minutes of your lives, then do feel free to drop that in the Q&A now, because you know, I'd like to make this an interactive session to the extent that it's possible to do so when I can't see you.
Joyce, yes, there will be a recording available of the webinar at the end. So that will be on the Staffordshire Chamber of Commerce website.
And good morning, Joyce. Nice to see you, or not see you. And also Liz, I see you've just commented there as well. Lots of people I know.
Liz, you're absolutely right. It can be a little weird not being able to see all of the attendees, but what I would say is it gives you a great opportunity to go and grab a coffee, because nobody can see you do it. We'll just give it another couple of minutes just to make sure that we've got everyone.
Mm-hmm. We've got a chap raising his hand there. That's Melvin. Hello, James. Morning, James. James Bailey from OC UK. Liz says,
good morning, everyone.
Okay. Right. Key question from Jonathan there. Is LinkedIn Premium worth it? Great question. I will definitely come to that. Thank you. Peterson, good morning. Nice to see you.
For those of you that have just joined us and didn't hear my little intro at the beginning, we cannot see or hear you today. So the only way that you can talk to us is via the chat function or the QEA, either at the bottom of your screen or at the top of your screen. So you can just say hello to us in the chat function if you want to today. And it's just a case of typing in what you want to say. And you can put questions via the QEA the whole way through the presentation today.
And we've got two people with their hands raised at the moment, Melvin and Thomas. Don't know if you wanted to drop like a personal note or something in the chat, if there was anything you particularly wanted to ask, or whether Laura maybe just answered that.
Their hands have gone down, so I'm not.
So,
maybe.
I guess you must have looked into actually answering the thing they were going to ask. There you go.
Let's have a look.
Steve Timmis is there. Great to see you.
Oh, just to say you're here, Melvin. Fantastic. Thank you.
Lovely. Hello, Melvin.
Fantastic. I think we should get going now, if that's okay with you, Matthew.
Absolutely no problem at all. Well, good morning, everybody. So this next hour of your lives is basically a little bit of a taster session, an introduction to the most powerful business networking platform on the planet, which is LinkedIn. It's hugely underutilized by a lot of people, and it's therefore something that a lot of people are really quite interested in, particularly, dare I say, at this current difficult time where, you know, I guess social selling has become even more important than it ever has been before. But I think that takes me to my sort of first point, really, which is that conceptually, the way that we look at LinkedIn, it's really, although it looks and feels an awful like social media, actually the reality is that treating it as social media can sometimes lead us down a little bit of a blind alley. And actually the better way to think about this is to treat LinkedIn as though it is digital business networking. So it is basically the same approach that we would take to any other form of networking that we would do. So I guess the important thing here is really to kind of get some feedback from all of you to start with, just to kind of get a bit of a sense of, you know, what it is you'd like to deal with during the course of the next hour, and any sort of burning questions you've got about, you know, things that you'd like to know about LinkedIn. And whilst maybe a couple of you drop some questions into the chat and into the Q&A section, I'll deal with that first question really from Jonathan, which is really sort of straight in there with, is it worth paying for LinkedIn Premium? Now, for those of you who don't know what LinkedIn Premium is, that if you go onto LinkedIn and you see that you've got, you know, some people that you come across have got those little gold badges rather than the little blue badge. So the in symbol has got a little gold badge on it. They've probably paid for one of the paid for versions of LinkedIn. Now, there are various different paid for versions of LinkedIn, LinkedIn Premium being the sort of first tier one. The next level up is something like Sales Navigator, which people who are professional sales people will use to kind of get a better sense of who it is they're prospecting. There's also one called LinkedIn Recruiter as well, which is specifically designed for recruitment agencies to be able to understand more about both prospects and indeed, you know, candidates and indeed clients, you know, so client businesses. And so they get a much better sense of what's really going on with people in terms of whether or not they're open to having job applications or job approaches, that kind of thing. So there are various different paid for versions of LinkedIn. Whether LinkedIn Premium or not is worthwhile, well, that's a really interesting question. The course that I'm currently running, what I tend to advocate to my delegates is simply this: get as much as you can possibly get out of the free version, and really test the limits of what you can get out of the free version of LinkedIn before you even consider paying for anything. For me personally, I find that LinkedIn Premium doesn't really give me enough to warrant paying for it. It doesn't give me enough that's over and above the free version, that if the free version is used well and used in a smart way, that actually makes it worth the money. Whereas if you get everything you can get out of the free version, then it may possibly, depending on your particular world, be worth an upgrade to Sales Navigator, depending on what's going on in your world. So hopefully that kind of answers the question a little bit. Okay. Oh, lovely. Yeah, that's great. So we've got Simon from Mercy and Labels asking the question: what's the best way to get people to connect with you and to start dialogue to get interest and sales opportunities? I think that's a terrific question, Simon. That's also one of the most common questions we get. The other common questions that that we very, very often get asked is, you know, what's the best thing to do in order to actually oh yeah, I've got another one here. How do I use Sales Navigator? I'll come on to that in a sec. The other thing is how to get content and to target content. I've got Danielle's also asking about targeting contacts without coming across too sales-like, or how you even engage with people. Martin is actually saying Sales Navigator is definitely worth the cost. He's added 600 new connections in the last 6 weeks. Wow, that's impressive. Do you feel there's been a drop in people using LinkedIn during this time with furloughed workers? Actually, no, I would say there's been an increase. I've definitely seen an increase in the level of activity on LinkedIn, but what that's also really kind of shows is that we need to get much more differentiated in the way in which we're doing it. So Jonathan says, thank you for the explanation on Premium. So great, that's good stuff. I think based on the kinds of questions that are coming through, it probably makes sense to go through a couple of these slides that I've got here. Really, you know, what an awful lot of people seem to be looking at is how do we generate more inbound business and become, you know, perhaps thought leaders, but certainly generate more inbound business by maybe connecting to the right people, putting out the right kind of content that also connects to people. So quick upfront contract, we've got 60 minutes. I want this to be about LinkedIn effectiveness. And the top 3 challenges are really things that have already started to come out in the chat here, which is what to say when connecting, who to connect to, and what to post. So I think that kind of makes a lot of sense. And I'm very pleased that you've kind of said those things in the chat, because they were exactly the things that I prepared. It's almost like I've done this before. So the first thing I want to show you is actually quite a top tip for those of you who don't know about it. If you've got a mobile phone, if you haven't accessed the Zoom webinar using your mobile phone, then this is actually a really good tip. You will see if you open up the LinkedIn app, for those of you that have got it, you will see there's a nice little kind of code there in the search field at the top, which looks a little bit like a QR code. And there's a very simple reason for that. It's a QR code. So if you tap on it, the thing that will come up is a little camera screen. And if it's the first time you've opened this, then it will say something like, allow LinkedIn to access your camera. do that, and it will come up with the camera as default evermore next time you open it up. Alternatively, you can tap on that thing at the top right where it says My Code. And if you do that, you can see your own QR code, which you can either share or you can save to your photos. And if you save it to your photos, you can include it in your email signature. If anybody who's ever received an email from me will see that my QR code is in my email signature. Or indeed, you can even put it into a presentation, a little bit like this one right now. So what I would suggest you all do right now is hold your phone with the scan function up to the screen. And you should be able to scan that QR code and go straight through to find me on LinkedIn. And I would welcome you all to kind of reach out and connect to me. For those of you who are not already connected to me, please do so. Hopefully that's a useful little tip. And I do apologize to any printers in the room, but that does kind of, oh yeah, Liz has just said it works. Good, I'm pleased about that. The science works, we like it. It's quite clever. It's really good when, when we do get back into anything close to a kind of a new normal. And we're able to have face-to-face networking meetings again. This is a really neat little trick to be able to kind of exchange details and to be able to connect to one another in a live environment. So quite a neat little thing to be able to do. So hopefully everybody's managed to get something there. I'm going to sort of talk about setting the scenes, and one of the sort of questions that came up in the Q&A already is how can we connect to people and not seem too salesy and not too pushy? I think that's a really profoundly important question, because of course we all want to sell more stuff, but we don't want to seem like everybody else, all the people who are kind of hunting on LinkedIn and looking very, very pushy. So, some key Sandler rules here, which are people love to buy, but they do hate to be sold to. They love to buy, but they hate to be sold to. So we kind of want to be able to make connections that are meaningful, that actually help people to connect and to produce some value that then makes us more like the flame than the moth. So basically people are attracted towards us rather than we kind of push our stuff at them. And to that point, you can't really sell anything to anybody. They've got to discover that they want it. And that really comes down to how we engage with them in the first place. And in the same vein, people will buy in spite of hard sell, not because of it. In fact, we always say in Sandler, hard sell is good for one thing: hard pushback. So if you want hard pushback, by all means, give people the hard sell. And also, try not to make things too much about sort of the technical details about what's going on in your world, because frankly, people don't really care how much you know until they know how much you care. You need to engage with them first. And the final of these 5 key rules for LinkedIn use, for me, is always manage your behaviors, not your results. Results are the things that the accountants report on at the end of the month. The results are the things you see in the rearview mirror. Unless you are blessed with a time machine, there is nothing you can do to influence your past results, because they are just that, they're the past. The only thing you can do to influence your future results is to manage the things that are within your control, which is your behaviors. So one of the things that I teach in the full course is talking about the behaviors that lead to the kinds of results that you actually want. So I'm going to touch on a few of those today. Obviously, with only 60 minutes, there is a limit to how much I can go through, but I will endeavor to give you a few sort of top tips around those things. So that's great. So just looking into the Q&A there, we've got a couple here. How do I use Sales Navigator, and how do I approach a new target contact without coming across too sales-like? Nicola, I'm going to say that Sales Navigator is a highly complicated and complex system, and it really is the next level up from the basics of LinkedIn. So what I would say is, initially, using Sales Navigator is something that I wouldn't suggest you do until you're really, really confident with using the free version of LinkedIn. And if you already are confident with the free version of LinkedIn, then perhaps you and I could take a conversation offline. Be really happy to help you with that. Danielle, I'd like to know how to approach new target contact without coming across too sales-like, or even how to engage them. I will definitely be dealing with that in just a few moments. I'll give you a couple of top tips on that one. So that's great. So I think that's the open Q&A at the moment. So a couple of things. The first thing is you need an engaging profile. You need to look at your profile first and foremost. For those of you who've basically got the standards kind of profile that you've just maybe set up and maybe you haven't done an awful lot to curate at this point in time, do go through every single one of the fields that is editable within your profile and have a look at updating it. I'm going to give you a couple of tips on this, again, being very mindful of time and use from this session. But one of the things is headline. A lot of people just put their job title in the headline, but the job title's already there. The job title will be picked up from your current position, from the CV or the resume bit down slightly below this about section on your profile. And the headline really needs to be something which has got a few keywords in it, but says what you do. And the whole thing about LinkedIn, the whole approach to LinkedIn is pretty much the same as your approach to networking, which is think about them. Think about what's going on in their world. Make it about them, not about you. So think about the sorts of things that you do to work with your clients and indeed your prospects to make bad stuff that's going on in their world go away. You know, this is about positioning yourself as a trusted advisor to support them. So in my case, it says business acceleration through people, processes, and personal development. Lots of P's in there, but I managed to say it without stuttering, which is good. Sales and management trainer, mentor, and coach. So there's a bunch of words in there that people might actually search on. So make it searchable. That is quite useful. But also think in terms of the stuff that actually you do. You know, don't just think about what it is you are, because if I just put training associate, that means bugger all to most people, forgive the phraseology. But if you say that this is what I do, I help people with business acceleration through people, processes, and personal development. And I'm going to shoot myself in a minute for saying the word help, but I'll explain why in a moment. You know, that actually explains what it is I do. Have a little play around with the imagery as well. You know, think about that image that's at the top on the back of your profile. You know, if you've only just set your profile up, or if you haven't done an awful lot with it, you'll probably have a sort of bluey greeny kind of banner, which is the standard kind of LinkedIn banner. And what you're looking for here is to put some sort of image that is relevant to what you do. Think about some sort of nice branding. And if you haven't come across canva.com previously, the free version of that actually has a LinkedIn banner template in there that's actually the right size. You can upload your own photographs, and it just takes all of the kind of the difficulty out of this. Okay, so Laura's just said one of the attendees is attending through a phone, might not be able to see the slides. Maybe let them know the slides will be available, or after say what you can see. Yeah, no problem at all, I can do that. So for those attendees that are attending through phones, if you can't see the slides, you know, I'm more than happy to have a separate chat with you offline. And you know, basically the video is going to be available as well, so you will be able to view the video of this webinar afterwards, so you'll be able to see some of these slides at your luxury. Okay, now in your about section, try and make it them centric. Make it about them, not about you. I'm going to use that phrase again. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So make it about them, not about you. You don't want this to be something saying, I have got 30 years worth of experience, I am local, I am special, I am this, I am that, I'm the other, because you just sound like everybody else. All those things might be true. All those things might well be big selling points, but unfortunately they're not the things that really set you apart. And also, nobody really cares about that stuff until they know what it is you can do for them. So think about the kinds of frustrations and annoyances that are going on in their world, the things that disappear when they're lucky enough to have you in their lives, and try and sort of craft the way you write the about section towards that. There are some useful techniques that you can use in doing that. And also, by the way, you'll notice there that I've actually put my contact details in there. Don't be shy. If you want people to contact you through LinkedIn, it's a good idea to give them the contact details. Yes, you can put it in the about section further up as well, but actually just bang it in there. Just let people have it. Couple of words that I would avoid if I was you, and this is probably my own head trash. Most of us, especially if you're a business owner or you started your business, then there's a good chance you are actually passionate about what you do. There is a slight problem with that. The word passionate has now become so overused that it's ubiquitous and has almost become completely meaningless. Last time I typed passionate into the LinkedIn search engine, which was a month or so ago, you will see there on the screen that I got 3,436,594 results. That's nearly 3.5 million people who are passionate about toner cartridges and toilet roll and, you know, chemicals and, you know, stuff which frankly they might well be passionate about it, but it's hard to believe that every single one of them is all that passionate. So I think try and avoid that overused word. Try and find something that's different, that actually sets you apart from everybody else. You kind of want to sound a little bit different to other people. The other thing is, and this again is probably my own head trash, I have a slight, I guess, challenge around the word help, because again, we all want to be helpful. We all want to add value. We all want to do things to help our clients and to help our prospects. You know, we're helpful people. That's why we got into doing what we do. The problem is with the word help, for me, it kind of comes pregnant with a secret meaning, which is that I do stuff for free. If I'm helping people, typically I'm not charging them. And assuming that you are in some sort of commercial enterprise, the chances are you do actually want to get fair compensation for the value that you bring. So typically I would use phraseology like, I work with clients to be able to solve X, Y, Z. I work with clients in order to be able to bring this solution to their lives. I work with clients in order to add this value. So the phrase work with rather than help kind of just edges it a little bit for me, purely because, you know, it kind of tells them without telling them that you are going to charge them for this, because, you know, that you bring value to their lives, and therefore you should get something that, you know, in recompense for that, that is commensurate with the value you bring. So hopefully that makes some sense. Do please feel free to keep chucking questions into the Q&A if there's anything that I'm saying is not making sense, or you need me to slow down, or if you want to know how you can actually get to know more about this stuff. So on to the very things that we talked about. The first thing is really about who it is you're connecting to, before we actually even get into this next bit, which is the connection requests. And I guess the first thing you want to know is what does your perfect customer look like? What does your perfect client look like? And, you know, who is it you're trying to connect to? Are you trying to connect to those clients, or are you trying to connect to referral partners, people that you can form some sort of a strategic alliance with in order to be able to build relationships with them so that they can connect you to your perfect client? Ultimately, it's really about what you want to get out of this. So when you are doing your profile, when you're doing connection requests, and when you're doing content, all three of those things, have in mind who it is you're targeting. Have in mind the customer persona that you are actually aiming this at. So think about who it is that actually is your perfect customer. And when we do the full course, we talk about a Sandler acronym, which is CAPS. Now, CAPS is C-A-P-S, and the C stands for characteristics. Now, what you're looking for here is, you know, the demographics, if you like, the socio-political position, you know, the market vertical, the sector that they're in, the size of the company, the type of people you might talk to within those companies. So, for example, if you're a health and safety consultant, the chances are with a smaller company, you're probably talking to the business owner. But with a larger company, you might well be talking to their in-house health and safety team, or their HR team, or somebody who deals with the people management, or their facilities management team, or their operations team. Whoever it is within that particular company, depending on the size of the company. So who you target and the customer persona that you're looking at really changes depending on where you are and who it is that you actually want to do business with. So when you're looking at the characteristics, think in those terms, and you'll probably find you've got 2, 3, 4, maybe even more customer personas, but keep it relatively focused. Keep it focused to the things that are really relevant to you. A in CAPS, this stands for alternatives. And the alternatives that we're looking at here are, what are the things that your ideal customer might have tried for themselves and been disappointed by? What are the things that they might have tried and been disappointed by? The things that actually might lead them to do business with you. So what can that look like? Very simply, it can look like this. Again, I'm going to use the health and safety consultant because it's a nice, consistent one to use. A lot of people, they may have tried, you know, I guess, downloading policies and safe systems of work templates off the internet. And then they might well have, I don't know, come up against some form of, sadly, tribunal or health and safety executive kind of inspection, and just discovered that actually the things they downloaded off the internet as kind of standard template form things actually were not tailored enough to their particular situation to actually be effective. And as a result, what they've done with the DIY approach, the do-it-yourself approach, was not really fit for purpose, which might then lead them to actually dealing with a specialist. So, you know, these are the sorts of alternatives, the things they might have tried and been disappointed by. And I'm sure every single one of you within your own areas and your own businesses can think of examples like that. Something that, you know, your typical clients might well have tried to do in order to solve the problems that you solve before actually coming to you and maybe even admitting defeat and realizing they needed an expert like you in their lives. You know, because that happens, right? You know, we all sort of try to kind of do it ourselves a little bit, or, you know, bring in somebody. They might have even tried one of your competitors. They might have even tried one of your competitors and been disappointed by them. How sad would that be? P stands for pains. Now, pains are really, I guess I can go into an awful lot more detail with pain. The Sandler concept of pain is very detailed, and it really sort of speaks to the absolute underlying impact of a problem. It's not the problem itself, it's not the fixable thing, but it's actually the impact of a problem. But if you just, for the purposes of this 60-minute seminar, think in terms of a pain is really a bad thing that goes away when they're lucky enough to have you in their lives. A pain is a bad thing that goes away when they're lucky enough to have you in their lives. And the S then actually just stands for the symptoms of that pain. What are the surface symptoms, the indicators that those problems, those pains might actually be there? Now, these symptoms might be things you can fix. They might be the things that you can fix, but they're not the real thing. They're not the underlying issue. You know, the underlying issue is not always that the health and safety executive have done an investigation and found you wanting. It's not even necessarily the fines or things that might well come along. It's not even the fact that these days when the HSE sends somebody in, they're going to charge you an hourly rate for the 2 people that they send in, which is basically a blank checkbook, let's be honest. No, the reality is that actually the impact is the loss of productivity, the fact that you've got people out of work, you've got potentially the site being shut down, you've got the fact that the ongoing impact of that might actually end up being, you know, real kind of danger for the business. And if there's real danger for the business, well, that actually puts people out of work, potentially puts you out of work as well, which means, you know, ultimately the real pain is, well, I could end up living in a cardboard box under a bridge, which is not exactly ideal. That's a real pain. So, you know, you kind of want to be thinking about those things in your head when you are sort of writing any of these things, including connection requests, including content, and including what you, yeah, I'll come back to that in 1 second, Danielle, and including your profile as well. So Danielle says she missed what the A stood for. The A stands for alternatives. Alternatives are the things they might have tried and been disappointed by before they came to you. Okay, so CAPS is characteristics, A is alternatives, P is pains, and S is symptoms. It's a nice way of kind of creating a very, very simple customer client persona. And when you are addressing your connection requests, when you're addressing your content, and when you address your profile, address it to those relevant persona, the people who are actually potential clients for you. Hopefully that makes some kind of sense. So this is a very, very simple example template request for a connection, okay? Now, a little bit of a health warning on templates. The watchword with everything on LinkedIn, as it is in life, is authenticity. People can smell it when you are inauthentic. People can they've got spidey sense that will tingle the minute that they see something that looks, feels, or sounds inauthentic or like a template. So I'm a huge believer in having templates for efficiency, but make sure you tailor them to the actual situation and the circumstance that you're in. So, for example, when you do something like this, which is a nice way of approaching things, you know, I'm building my local network of business owners in the whatever area. Only say that if you actually are building your network of local business owners. You know, say something different if you're not. I saw we've already got some mutual connections. If you've got 1 or 2 connections, actually say the number. If you've got loads of connections, well, that's fair enough. I can see that we've got loads of people in common. You know, try to make it your tone of voice. Use this as a base to work to. The reason why we use templates is because it is easier to edit than design. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't edit. You certainly should. Make it personal to the person you're actually trying to connect to. And by the way, I had somebody on my course yesterday who said that somebody had told them that you should just fire out connection requests and not put a message with it. I cannot stress strongly enough how wrong that is. That is absolutely categorically wrong. The only exception to that is when you are in a room with people and you are literally standing right next to them and you use the QR code, or you use one of the other techniques that I show on the course, like Find Nearby, where people know, because you've personally done the connection request, you've done it verbally, that actually there is a good reason why it is that you're connecting. Make things personal. This is business networking. Okay, so we've got here, Dot is saying, do you think, given our current climate, using LinkedIn to contact with businesses to help alleviate their business pain might be a golden opportunity? Might they be more responsive? And the short answer to that is, Dot, yes, absolutely 100%. I totally agree. Right now, a wise person once said, and I guess they were sort of trying to be slightly provocative when they said it, but they said, crisis does not cause problems, it exposes them. And I guess what they were meaning by that is actually it's much easier to get focused to the real issue when we've got all these situations going on at the moment. And people are much more open to actually self-discovering what's really going on. And therefore, they are much more open to a genuine contact. However, what I have seen is a massive uptick in the number of people who are using bots and kind of artificial ways of sending out connection requests, which immediately just set the alarm bells going because they just look totally non-genuine. Kerry is saying here, hi Matthew, we're a small training provider and new to LinkedIn. How do we get our business details to new contacts or even companies that are out of our local area? That's a great question, Kerry. I think the key thing here is really about A, setting up your profile in a way that is really effective. B, making sure that when you do your connection request, it is tailored to your contacts, and C, making sure that your content is well promoted to the right people in the right way. And again, that's something which I can go into in a small amount of detail today, but really, you know, we're a bit limited on time to be able to give you all of the detail on how to do that. And Roy is saying, I've had so much success with LinkedIn since COVID. Used well, it's a hell of a tool. Thank you, Roy. Appreciate that. Good stuff. So, connection request here template. I'm building my local network of business owners in the XXX area, whatever it is, whether it's Staffordshire or it's Cheshire or wherever it is you are. I saw that we already have some mutual connections. I look forward to learning more about you and your business. I'm keen to understand how I can add value to you and your network. Now, this is important. This is about them, not about you. You're trying to find a common reason for connecting. When they do connect, the first thing you do is probably wait for a little bit. Don't sort of seem incredibly desperate and hop straight onto it, unless they're interacting with you with a question, in which case, absolutely fine, go back to them. Use your own emotional intelligence. This is an interaction with a real human being at the end of the day. It might well seem virtual, but it is a real interaction with a real person. Go back to them when you do go back and say, I appreciate the connection. It's good to expand my network, but right now I only know what I've read about you on LinkedIn, because that is probably all you do know about them. I'm looking forward to seeing your posts and learning more about you and your business. Remember what it was you said in the original connection? You said you want to learn more about them. Well, guess what? When you do connect, don't make a liar of yourself. Say it. I do want to learn more about you. I don't know enough about you to be sure whether there might be business to be done between us, or if there might be people in my network I can introduce you to, but I'm certainly open to finding out. Would you be open to me sharing with you a little about what we do too? This is a nice approach. It's ethical, and it's about establishing a proper relationship here. Okay, so you are trying to actually form relationships. Okay, not every single person that you connect to is going to end up being a customer. Some of them probably aren't even prospects. Not everybody's that lucky. They don't all get to do business with you. But you know what? Every single one of them is probably connected to somebody who is a potential customer, who is a potential prospect. So treat them nicely. Treat them with respect, and hopefully they will treat you in exactly the same way. That's certainly the kind of law of reciprocity, Emerson's law of compensation. The more you give, the more you get. You kind of want to have a situation where the stuff you are putting out into the world is likely to attract good stuff back towards you as well. So really, it's about expanding your network in a sensible way and doing it in an ethical way as well. A nice, even shorter version of that. Thanks very much for the connection. Is there anybody in my network that you'd like me to introduce you to? Really short and sharp, really good. Guess what? In order to be able to know whether or not there's anybody in your network that they want to be connected to, guess what they have to do? They have to look on your profile. They have to look at who you're connected to, which means they have to learn more about you. So it's an indirect sort of stealth way of getting them to kind of look. But it's nice, you know, it's done in an ethical way. So there's just another thing that's just popped up in the chat here. I'll just quickly check. Okay, I've been told the same, but I have to try them both. I got more connections accepted from the request without messages. That's really interesting, Pascal. I found the exact diametric opposite. In fact, what I find is that typically if I send out connection requests without a message, my batting average is somewhere around 30 to 40% of my connection requests actually getting connected. I tend to average between 70 and 80% connection requests, people actually accepting the connection if I send it out with a message and I make it personal. So the numbers tell me that the connection requests do work with an actual message, providing the message is the right message. And I think the key thing there is absolutely about what kind of message you've got. So if yes, rather than batting back and forth with messages on here, shall we go old school, have a quick 2 to 5 minute chat on the phone? I'm sure that between us, we can work out whether or not there's any ways we might even be able to work together. What's your number? I'll give you a quick call. You know, the idea here is to be able to kind of generate some sort of offline conversation so that you can actually have real in-depth conversations with your potential clients. Okay, thinking about posts and content, how to do them well. I'm going to think particularly about sort of video. Video is a really good form of content to be putting out there, but also posts. Everything is about that kind of initial customer persona that we talked about earlier on. Think about who your target audience is or are. So, you know, for example, if you're doing video or if you're writing something, you know, think about who it is that you're actually targeting it at. So let's say with video, target audience, you're not going to go presenting to one of the big 4 accountancy firms wearing sort of, you know, surfer gear, and you wouldn't necessarily present to Google wearing a 3-piece suit, you know. So you want to make sure that actually what you're presenting looks like, you know, it's congruent with the kinds of people that you're actually sort of trying to attract. There we go. Roy's just said you can always get connections without a message, but if you want to start a conversation with your message, it's tough to do if you don't know why they're connected. Absolutely brilliant point, brilliantly made. Thank you very much, Roy. I appreciate that. It's a really, really good point. So what to talk about? Make sure you're always adding value, no matter what kind of connection you put out there. What kind of content you put out there. Think about the value you're adding. Think about who you're targeting. If you're doing it on video, script it and practice it. If you've got an auto cue, which is unlikely, most people don't have an auto cue at home, but you know, maybe use that, but never ever ever read a script that's off camera. I'll show you what that looks like right now, because I've got a camera right here that I'm looking down right now. So if I'm talking to a camera like I'm talking now, I'm looking into the camera lens, which means I'm looking at you as the audience. However, if I'm reading a script that's just here, you can see straight away that I'm reading a script and actually my eyes are moving, but I'm not looking at you, which suddenly looks less honest. And it looks less real, so you kind of want to form a connection. By all means, have a script. In fact, definitely have a script. Know what you're going to say, practice it, but don't ever read the script if you haven't got a way of actually looking straight down the lens when you're doing it. Learn it, speak to it naturally. Not everybody's a natural on camera, and the people who look natural on camera have typically had a heck of a lot of practice in order to look that natural. There's a guy called Nick Pilgrim who runs a business called Cine Roboter. For those of you who are BNI connections, right now Nick has got a series of video tutorials on Udemy, which is like a learning platform. I think he's charging very little for it. I think it's like 25 quid or something like that. I would urge you to go and seek that out. So look at Cine Roboter. It's C-I-N-E for Cine, and then Roboter, which is basically like robot, but with an A on the end of it. Have a look for that on Udemy, which is a platform that's spelled U-D-E-M-Y. And you will definitely be able to find what he's doing. Some really, really good guidance. And also follow him on LinkedIn, because every Thursday he puts out like a little kind of top tip video on how to do video really well. So, you know, own video, make it really good. Use subtitles if you can do. There's a thing called rev.com. Which allows you to get subtitles put on there, because 85% of people actually watch videos on LinkedIn with the subtitles off. I know that's a weird stat, but it's true. And if you think yourself about sort of when you're scrolling through something on your phone, if you do use the app, actually quite often you'll sort of stop on a video and you'll kind of watch it because the words on the subtitles will have caught your attention, and you'll start to almost read them before you kind of even think about clicking on and actually listening to the tone of voice and what's going on there. Try and make your videos, if you do use video, sort of about 1 to 5 minutes maximum. The optimum is probably about 2 to 3 minutes. It can host up to 10 minutes, but except in really exceptional circumstances, I wouldn't be using all 10 of those minutes. And think about, you know, your location and your equipment and all that kind of good stuff. Again, there's loads of good guidance there from Nick if you want to be using that. So a couple more questions just come up that I should just basically just address before we move on. Should you always show your connections rather than hide them? Yeah, I always do. I've got no problem at all with showing connections. Again, if you are connecting in an open way, Simon, with people and saying something along the lines of, you know, is there anybody in my network that you'd like to be introduced to? It's always a good idea to actually have your connections shown so that people can actually see what's going on. Anthony asks, should I accept or reject connection requests that I'm not really interested in? That's a really, really good point, Anthony. Now, if they look like they are a prospect or a potential prospect, as in a suspect, or they look like they might be connected to the sorts of people you do business with, then I would accept the connection request. Anytime you bring somebody into your first tier connections, that's somebody who's directly connected to you, then anybody they are directly connected to becomes your second tier connection, which means they become at only one remove from you, where previously they might have been at 2 removes from you. And what you're looking for there is really when your first tier connections start to interact with your content, which is what you would like them to do when you're producing really good, sticky, engaging content. When they start to engage with your content, anybody who's in their first tier connections, i.e. your second tier connections, will start to interact with you, and because they'll see what's going on, because they'll see the comments that your first tier connections have made on your content, because that will push it up to the top of their newsfeed as well. So it's a way of bringing people who are potentially really quite useful to just one step closer to you. For those of you who are looking at the Q&A and the chat, have a little look at it now, because Roy Johnson's actually just put a link in there for the Udemy course. So if anybody's interested in doing that, thank you, Roy. That's very good. You're being Debbie McGee to my Paul Daniels here. I really appreciate that. That's very good. Please tell me you're not wearing a spangly leotard. Thank goodness it's a webinar and I can't see you. Anyway. So, oh, there you go. It's almost like here's a couple of people I prepared earlier. So there is Nick. So have a look at him. He's very, very useful. But don't be concerned when you look at what he does and think, oh my goodness, if I'm going to do video content, I'm going to have to do it like that. Remember, he's a professional videographer. You know, what he does, this is his bread and butter. He produces stuff like that all the time. Also have a look at this other chap who's on the right-hand side there, a guy called Adrian Hyde. Adrian just uses his mobile phone. He's got an iPhone, and he just captures video in the moment. And the reason why I suggest you go and have a look at him is because he does stuff which is very, very much about value add content, and it's all kind of just in the moment. And he captures moments really, really well. So he shows you kind of how you don't need to necessarily have a huge production budget or anything else to be able to do video really, really well on LinkedIn. These are people who do great posts. And talking of great posts, that sounds a little self-serving to say this, but this is an example which I'm sharing with you because it's a great example of what I'm trying to explain when I talk about having very targeted content, thinking about a specific customer persona when you address your content, when you write anything. Now, there's a couple of things here. Firstly, I know exactly who it is I'm writing to when I write this. Secondly, it tells a little bit of a story. And, you know, if we say that facts will tell people things, but stories will sell people things, facts tell, stories sell. That's a really important takeaway for all of us. We kind of want to be having stories. Human beings are hardwired to engage with stories. They're hardwired to kind of listen to this. Okay. Oh, yeah, Laura has just said, Roy, can you give me the link here in the chat, because not all the attendees will be able to see the Q&A. That's great. Thank you very much, Laura. And Roy, if you wouldn't mind just sharing that across there, that would be terrific. Okay, so this is something that I wrote which was targeted to solo entrepreneurs. Now, these are people who started a business because they're bloody good at what they do. They are technically excellent. They are probably passionate about what they do as well, although, you know, as we've already said, I'll probably avoid using that word. But they know exactly what they're doing, and they know that they can add value to their clients' lives if only they could get more clients. And unfortunately, they've come to the sneaking realization that in order to be, you know, getting in front of the right clients and the right prospects, they're going to have to become just as expert at sales as they once were, as they already are, I should say, at what it is they do and the value they bring. So this is a conversation that's based on real conversations I've had. So no, I'm not in sales. I'm confused. Didn't you just say you're responsible for the growth of the business? Well, yes, but that doesn't mean I do sales. I didn't start this company to sell. I do what I do to add value to my clients. Makes sense? Tell me, what are the top 3 things that need to happen to grow your business? Well, that's obvious. I need more clients, more proposals and quotes turning into business more quickly. Oh, and existing clients using more of my services. Fair enough. Tell me, how would you describe the top 3 jobs of a salesperson? Ah, I see what you did there. And I guess you're right. If I want to grow, I need sales, but I still say I'm not a salesperson. I'm intrigued. Why not? Well, salespeople are pushy. They're sleazy. They're unethical. And that's not me. No, it's not. But you want to grow, and you just told me that growth is a euphemism for sales. Fair? Fair. So So I think that I just discovered when I started this business, I accidentally took on a sales role. Now, that is very, very targeted at the specific mentality, if you like, because lots and lots and lots of us want to grow, but not many of us actually want to think about ourselves being in sales, because sales has these negative connotations. Wrongly, you know, nothing happens in business without something getting sold. So it's, you know, salespeople, good salespeople are not pushy or sleazy or unethical, but it's part of the, if you like, the perception that some people have. So then I finish that off with, want to grow your business but hate the idea of selling? Comment, I'm not in sales, and I'll send you a free white paper, 3 questioning strategies to help you close the sale. And then I put your 3 hashtags down at the bottom there. Now, in the first 7 days, I got nearly 5,500 views on this, 50 reactions, which are the kind of little likes and little light bulbs and sort of curious faces and things like that. I got 82 comments. I got 42 new connections, and 33 people put the comment in, I'm not in sales, and got one of the free papers that I sent out. Of those 33, 18 of them were valid prospects that were warmed up for a prospecting call, nice, high quality interactions that were led by something that was value add, that was relevant, and that was real in their world. It's very targeted, the type of person that I actually do a lot of business with. And guess what? I got a lot of business on the back of that. Funny enough, you know, if you've got 18 decent warmed up prospects and you can't do business, there's something wrong, right? So I was able to do that in a nice way. It took me 20 minutes to write that on a Saturday morning, having my first cup of tea of the day. Now, I would say that is 20 minutes well spent. So that is a good thing to be doing with your time. Now, I'm just going to check in the chat because there's a couple more things come up. Yeah, so that is Roy sharing the details on the Udemy course. So please do feel free to have a look in the chat, everybody, if you would like links to that video course. So people often ask, what should we be posting content on? And there's sort of 12 overarching themes for posts here. And you know, you can choose different ones that actually work for you. But again, always be thinking about who it is you're targeting. There's educational things. This is just simply, did you know? Whatever. You know, this is sharing information. This is useful stuff. Information is great as far as it goes, but try and tell a story. Remember, facts will tell people things, stories will sell people things. Then there's gratitude. I wanted to share today that I'm feeling grateful for XYZ. I'm feeling grateful for this. I'm feeling grateful for that. You know, people love a little bit of interaction with that. This is a human platform. It's a way of interacting. Human beings are sort of the thing that underpin all business. So we need to be interacting with each other as human beings. But, and I'll stress it, I said it earlier on, conceptually, we want to look at LinkedIn not so much as social media, even though it looks and it interacts like social media. Think of it more as digital business networking. Approach it like business networking. Don't get sucked into drama, don't get sucked into controversy, although if you do something controversial, do it in a knowing way. And don't be too controversial. Don't sort of try and actually rattle too many cages. Documentary, this works really great on video. I always say in the main body of the course, you know, we are a nation of nosy Parkers. We do love to look through the keyhole. We do love to look, you know, see what the butler saw, if you know what I mean. This is why there's so many reality TV programs on out there. You know, people actually love to see what's going on in other people's lives. So you might think that the stuff you do is, you know, not all that interesting, or because you're familiar with it, that familiarity breeds, if not contempt, at least, you know, something that makes you a little bit blasé about it, and you don't see what might be interesting about it to somebody else. So don't be at all afraid to do a little documentary of a day in the life of, or something like that. Think, you know, 2-3 minutes about sort of stuff that's going on in your world and stuff that you have to deal with. But think again about telling stories. Think about the kinds of clients that you are targeting about here. Oh, I've got a comment here from James Bailey. I agree with you on post quality, Matthew. I did a post last year on LinkedIn, which took me a while to write up with a lot of care. I managed to get almost 150,000 views in a week, and it went viral. Fantastic, great stuff. Oh, great comment there from Stephen. Does sharing other people's posts benefit or detract from your profile? Does it look like you're sucking up? Great question, and I'm going to come to that actually in number 6 on this list here, social proof. So that's a terrific question, Stephen. I will answer that very, very clearly in a moment. Controversy, you know, by all means put out some stuff that actually might provoke a little bit of a debate, but try to make sure that you're always on the right side of emotional objectivity when you say it. The minute that you find yourself rolling up your metaphorical sleeves and starting to stab the keyboard with 2 fingers going, right, how dare you comment, you know, the minute your emotional kind of hackles rise, calm down, pull yourself back. Never ever post in anger, never ever post drunk. Those are the two. If you take nothing else away from this webinar, definitely take those two things away. You do not want your emotions to get the better of you when you're posting or commenting. So when controversy is great, providing it's used in a smart way and providing it's used in an emotionally objective way to actually achieve a proper debate. Ask a question. I've been doing XYZ today. What's the big takeaway that you had? What's the big thing that you've been doing today, etc., etc. And then number 6, to Stephen's question, social proof. I saw this and it resonated with me. Now, this is really very relevant when you're sharing somebody else's post. One of the things that I say in the main course, for those of you who are sort of wondering, I keep referring to this main course. I'm doing a 5-hour course at the moment, running on Zoom every single week. So it basically gives you a lot more detail about how to get the most bang for your buck you can get out of the free version of LinkedIn. And really, I touch on all of these things that I'm talking about today in a lot more detail than I can do in this in the context of this 60-minute webinar. If anybody wants more information about that, I'm more than happy to give it to you. Social proof, really, when we talk about the sharing, never, ever, ever share something unless there's a good reason to share it. Think about the value that you are bringing from the posts you put out, including shared posts. So think about the value you are bringing to people in your network. If you just click share, you are not smashing the socials. You know, always put your own post that goes along with the shared post. Now, I've had shared posts which have gone viral. I had one 2 weeks ago where I got just shy of 50,000 views on a shared post. That's a lot of eyeballs seeing something I'd shared, but it was very relevant to me, what was shared, and it was very relevant to my client base and my customer persona. So there was a very clear reason why I was sharing it. There were specific people I was sharing it to as well. I tagged them into the post, so there was a good reason why I was doing it. LinkedIn likes this stuff. LinkedIn's algorithm likes this stuff, but you've got to do it well. You've got to do it in a smart way. Okay. A couple more things come up in the chat, so I'm just going to have a quick look. Never post drunk, noted. Thank you, Roy. Simon asks, is it good to connect with known people from known competitors or to steer clear of competitors on LinkedIn? I guess I would get you to ask the question to yourself. If a competitor has customers, are they likely to be connected to their customers? Are those customers people who you might ultimately potentially want to have as your customers, or do they look like people who might potentially want to become your customers at some stage? If so, it makes plenty of sense to have a sensible, broad connection with people who are, if not referral partners or strategic partners, at least people who are connected to people who might well become your prospects. And that probably does include competitors. That probably does include competitors. And remember that a competitor is in the eye of the beholder. Just because you see them as a competitor doesn't necessarily mean that they see you as one. I remember in one of my past lives, in one of my past jobs, every week around the board table, we would obsess about our biggest competitor on the high street. I was in retail at the time. And this was somebody who we saw as being another stationery company, because I was in stationery and office supplies at the time. And actually, I then sort of actually hooked up with somebody and met with somebody, funny enough, via LinkedIn, who worked for that competitor at a similar board level. They never talked about us. Never talked about us at all, because they saw themselves as a newsagent, not a stationer. Stationery was one particular product category in what they did. So very, very useful. So always connect to your competitors. Let's be honest. If you've only got a small percentage of the market, you'll be able to connect to a whole lot more of the market via them, because they've got the other chunks of the market. So you might as well be there. Liz has just come up with something. I'm a HR consultant. I'm connected with lots of other UK-based HR consultants. With the local consultants, we work together to collaborate. And I think that's a great point. Not all perceived competitors are necessarily competitors. They could, in fact, be collaborators if you can find areas of synergy and working relationships, or you could even form some strategic partnerships. And maybe even when you're playing in teams with them, you might be able to go after bigger customers together, depending on your sector. Nicola says that she'd love some information on the full course. Really pleased to do that. If you haven't done so already, Nicola, please do reach out and connect to me on LinkedIn. I'll be very pleased to send you some further information about that. Moving on with the other types of themes for posts, inspiration, inspiration and motivation, very, very similar things, but, somebody said to me this, and this, and it really struck a chord with me, so I wanted to share it with you today. Motivation, somebody's given you some kind of motivational comment and you want to kind of share that. I think that's got a bit hackneyed now. I think there's so many people out there. It feels a little bit like lazy posting. And, really for me, I think the key things here and the real kind of winners on this stuff is all the stuff up at the front, the gratitude, the documentary in particular, I'm a huge fan of, asking questions, social proof, all those things are particularly good. News and updates, stuff that's going on in your marketplace. This tends to be a little bit informative and therefore a little bit fact-led. Again, try and think in terms of stories if at all possible. And stories, the key element with a story is always the human element. So think about the way in which this has affected people, specifically the way in which it's affected somebody who looks like they might be a client of yours, somebody who is in your customer persona. So when you're telling news stories, make sure you use the story part of that more than the news part of that. Wins and successes, people love interacting with this stuff. If you've won an award, if people have been kind enough to give you some social proof of the good stuff you do, well, don't be at all shy about putting that out there. It might look a little bit like bragging, but if you've got a trumpet, you might as well blow it. You've got to at least let people know you've got a trumpet to blow. So, wins and successes, people love that. And by the way, people like interacting with it because it's a very kind of low risk thing for them to interact with. It doesn't feel at all salesy. It's just simply like, oh, I've been given this certificate, I've been given this award, and people go on and say congratulations. It's nice interaction and it's good for your personal brand. Share something that you've learned. Again, think in terms of the people you are targeting. Who are your potential customers? And share a personal story. Again, typically I try to keep LinkedIn very business orientated, but we are people and people do business with people, particularly people that they feel something in common with. So don't feel at all ashamed about doing something personal. Typically I keep my personal stuff to maybe fundraising activities and things that are particularly relevant, things that are personal causes, because then again, it's painting a picture of who you are as a human being, because people need to know who that human being is if they're going to do business with you. So hopefully that's of some kind of use to you. So I'm going to finish now, conscious we've got 5 minutes before the top of the hour. I just wanted to finish off. I mentioned at the very, very beginning of this about the fact that we manage ourselves on behaviors, not on results. And for those of you who may have joined a little bit late, the reason why we say that is because results are the things you see in the rear view mirror. Unless you have got a time machine, there's nothing you can do to go back and change your results. However, you can influence your future results by managing the things that are within your control. And the things that are within your control are your behaviors. So here are some key behaviors that I would like you to consider building into your daily rituals. So firstly, optimize your profile. Now you don't have to do that daily, obviously, but the first thing you do need to do is optimize your profile. I've given you a little hint about what that looks like. Look at the number of posts you do each day. Don't do more than 3. More than 3 and you start basically flooding your news feed with a load of stuff. And frankly, if you've got time to be able to write 3 posts, you're doing better than I can, because these things take time to write. Even a short post does take 20 minutes or so. Try to aim for about 1 a day, but if you don't quite manage that, at least 1 every other day. I always say no more than 3 hashtags in a post, because actually LinkedIn doesn't really react very well to more than 3. It doesn't share, it doesn't sort of boost you to more than 3. So just stick with 3 hashtags. Remember to tell stories. Remember to have a call to action, some form of reason to interact. Video is a very powerful tool. Do use it wisely. 23 points in the first hour. I haven't had time to explain that today, but I'm sure I can explain that to anybody who does come on the full course. Aim for 1 article a month. Articles, again, I haven't had time to explain that today, but really articles are long form posts. They're kind of like blog posts. They've got a little bit of evergreen content there that is, proof of your own particular area of expertise. So you kind of want to be doing one of those every month or every 6 weeks. Typically, I tend to stick to 10 connection requests every single day, which, as a minimum, I would be targeting 50% acceptance rate on. Typically, I get between sort of 70 and 80% connection requests being accepted. And because of the nature of what I do with the connection requests, I'm able to interact with every single one of those. There's a reason why the connection happened. Got something just coming up there. There was a comment on a previous slide about owning a day and time. Regular posts, yeah, thank you, Stephen, appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely, particularly with video posts, that works. So if you are doing video posts once a week, maybe, own a day and a time so people actually start looking for it. very often, for example, Nick Pilgrim, whose profile I shared with you earlier on, he owns a Thursday, in as much as every single Thursday he will post some sort of a video which gives you some top tips on things you can do with video, funnily enough. Track it. I haven't mentioned SSI, which is your social selling index. That's a way of measuring your behaviors on LinkedIn to see how effective you are. Again, if you come on the full course, I'll be able to have time to explain how to do that. I haven't really got time to be able to explain it now because I am conscious of the fact we are 2 minutes to the hour. So the final thing is, make sure you're asking for recommendations. You'll see down at the bottom of your profile, when you get there, you'll see recommendations. Recommendations are really written testimonials. When you've finished a piece of client work with people, with any of your clients, don't be at all afraid to kind of go back to them and say, thank you very much, really appreciated working with you. Would you be prepared to write a recommendation for the work that we've just completed on my LinkedIn profile? As you know, I use LinkedIn as a key part of my client engagement strategy. So just something along those lines to be able to kind of get recommendations. You kind of want to aim to have a minimum of 12. Because by the time you've got more than 12 recommendations, you've probably run out of family and friends who are prepared to say nice things about you. So you can actually start to build that reputation through other people saying good things about you, which is always more effective than you saying good things about yourself. So there we are. That is the end of this session. Hopefully that has been a useful hour of your lives, and you actually got something out of the last 60 minutes. For those of you who do want to know more about the full course, please do reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll be more than happy to have a contact with you and to tell you more about the next courses and what it is, what's going on with them. A few people making some kind comments there into the chat. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate that. Thank you all very much for attending. I hope it's been of use to you. Laura, would you like to sign off and do some little bits of housekeeping?
Fantastic, Matthew. Thank you so much. That was so great today and so informative. So thank you so much. I hope that all the attendees got something out of it. Just for those of you that arrived late, this recording will be available on the Staffordshire Chamber of Commerce website, and we will be able to provide the slides as well if Matthew's happy to do that. Once again, you will receive a survey after this session, and if you could just fill it out for us, just give us some feedback about how you think the Chamber's getting on with sort of webinars and what you would like to see in the future as well. But fantastic today, Matthew, really appreciate it, and hopefully you got something out of it just as much as the attendees did.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, and thank you, Laura, for having us. And for those of you who are interested in knowing yet more about the Sandler system and the way in which we work and the ethical approach we have to establishing a relationship of business equals with our potential prospects and clients, my colleague Roy Johnson will be doing tomorrow morning's webinar, also I believe at 10 o'clock. Yes. Just sign up through exactly the same portal that you signed up for this one. So come and see what the other Sandler guy does as well. We'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you.